Welcome back to
God.
Somewhere on the Spectrum, episode 12. I literally have no idea what we're doing here or why we're even recording, but here we go.
I had the briefest idea for an episode, and I was in the middle of talking Tyler through it, and he was like, let's just record it.
And we're doing it.
So welcome to Somewhere on the Spectrum where something might happen.
Somewhere on the Spectrum. Episode
I think
12.
I think essentially my goal for this is to talk about, because I know a lot of people who watch this are going to be interested in poetry, are going to be interested in the creative things we do, and essentially special interests when we refer to that. Because
extracurriculars.
Yes. Because special interests in autism, right?
Yes.
What would you say yours are?
That's a good question. Obviously, writing is one because I write at a rate that I don't even know a definition for the rate at which I write. It's a lot. Because
I would agree.
You hear like some writer died in like 1886, and they're like, they were a prolific writer. They wrote over 275 poems, and I'm like, I'm at like 4,000 or 5,000. So I write a lot. I'm also, I would say that one of my deepest interests is living things. I think I spend the vast majority of my life interacting with, literally everything from bees to bumblebees to ants to squirrels to chipmunks to...
Did you just say bees, the bumblebees?
They're a totally different thing.
Are they?
Bombus bombini, dude. Bumblebee.
Okay. This is why I need you
literally,
to tell me things.
If it's alive, I am deeply in love and fascinated with it. And I spend, like I said, an uncomfortable amount of my day is just interacting with little living things.
Yeah.
And then I like to learn all about them and know all about them. And like, I even have things on my phone that call them in. I do. I sit down and I'm like, little tiny golden mantled ground squirrel, what do you prefer, sunflower seeds or peanuts? And to which they respond, black oiled sunflower seeds. I store them in my cheeks.
So this episode's all about wildlife.
Yes. No, so and photography, that's another one.
Yeah. Because I think for me, like, if I had to say a special interest, I would have to say poetry. And I would have to say it's an obsession, almost. Like, not even just writing it, but like, I listen to that stuff. Yeah. It's like I listen to poetry albums like on repeat, which is a little bit like in work. Like if I have like an 8-hour shift, I'll spend like 8 hours just listening to poems, which is crazy.
Who mostly by?
Anyone. Like I have a whole playlist and it's fantastic. I will share it. But so for me, it was more of this episode was to talk about that, the creativity and autism.
I love it. Well, and I think you're right, especially. Go ahead.
You go.
No, you
go.
You. I want to really go first.
You hang up.
You go. I love you more.
I love you more. Anyway, go on.
Well, I was just going to say, I think you're dead on the money in that a large number of people that are tuning into this have found their way to this because of their love of poetry and creativity as well, whether it is photography or poetry. But that is something that you and I have shared for years. And I think that's initially what drew people into this, was to, first of all, to have a little more insight into what like might make our weird brains tick. But then also we do read a poem at the end of each episode, and
they just wait around for that.
They do. They're
just like, come on,
fast forward.
Come on.
They just hold down the like scrub button.
That's why our hours are so low.
Maybe we need to just read a poem like every 2 minutes.
We'll just put it in a random place and they have to find it.
Yeah, there is a poem hidden in here. You have to watch to find it.
But for me, it's like, this relates back to the episode where we did on coping mechanisms.
Yes.
Whereas if I talk about coping mechanisms for me, I think the biggest ones for me would be creativity. But because whether it be photography, even but I draw. I know you write insane amounts.
Yeah,
But you write finished pieces. I think I write scattered pieces
that makes
more than,
sense.
which is I have like over 100 unfinished poems at least,
Whoa.
which is crazy, right? Well,
See, I
some are
think
just
that highlights
like
a huge difference between us in that, like, my brain needs to get it all out at once and then it's gone and then
yeah,
I don't have to carry it anymore. But yours is like you just like set down breadcrumbs.
yeah, which is weird. But sometimes it's in one, and
Okay.
the other times it's like this isn't ready. Like I've talked about that before, but a lot of the ones that I have are just good ideas that I don't know how to write yet.
That makes sense.
But I know it's gonna be good when I get
When it's written. So
when it gets
then
there.
what do you feel on those? What has to happen for you to get to the point where it is ready to be written? Like, what is usually the missing element that is not allowing you to write it?
I think that is the same thing for you. Was it me saying, like, what? How can you write so much?
Yeah.
Because you don't really have an answer.
No, I don't.
It's just sort of you can like it's escape for both of us.
Yeah, it
So
is.
it's sort of, but why we write isn't like it's like you have this time where it's all bam out funneled.
Yeah,
But why is a big question. Big
it is.
question.
I've always felt like writing for me is it's almost as if I'm walking into this very dark, super quiet, perfectly scented cave that nobody else can go into. And when I walk into that cave, I don't have to, I don't, it's just me alone in the quiet dark and I don't have to deal with anything else. And that allows me just to go and pour everything out.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
What are you hearing behind you?
I don't know. It sounded like a squirrel,
What
but
kind
it's
of a
not.
squirrel?
A
A
blue
golden mantle
Smurf.
ground squirrel?
It's a blue Smurf squirrel.
Oh my God. Does he wear a
That would
little
be the
white
best.
hat?
Do you know something weird? Like
Yes.
this is. I write better poetry in motion,
While you're
which
moving around?
yeah, like
Interesting.
which relates to the phrase poetry in motion, but it's not. But like genuinely, if I can't get something out of my head, because obviously I write because we write for different reasons as well. That's an
Yeah,
important thing to note out. Because sometimes I'm writing for to post it. Sometimes I'm just writing to express. There are other
sure.
times where I'm writing to perform it.
Yeah.
And for me, it's sort of like I just gotta walk around
Weird.
and sort of talk to myself.
That's interesting because usually here's a weird thing. I'm better at writing sitting down than I am standing up.
Yeah.
Because here's why. When I write sitting down or when I write standing up or writing in general for me feels like a pouring out of my brain. And
Yeah.
it is dizzying sometimes because like I'll sit down to write and then next thing I know I'll have written 12 different things and it'll have been 40 minutes and I won't notice. So if I'm
Yeah.
doing that while standing up, it's like it is such a purging process that if I am standing up, it's like there aren't enough
It's almost
brain.
like I've got to tire out the distraction. You know what I
Okay,
mean?
see,
But I'm
mine's the
like sort of
opposite.
yeah.
Mine's literally like if I'm standing while trying to write, it's using so much of my body's resources to get it out of me that like it forgets that it also has legs that need to be standing. So then I like
Yeah.
can't do it. So I have to sit in order to be like,
But
that's,
I'm literally me. I just like if I
you have to be
just
moving.
have to not have to, but it helps. Like if I'm at
Okay.
this point where I'm like, okay, it's not coming to me. What do I do? Let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, it's here. You know?
Interesting.
And another question then to relate it back to the spectrum.
Okay.
Why do you think you haven't written about it as much as I have?
Probably because I just don't. I think before this podcast, it's just so me that I've just never
Yeah,
given
yeah,
it much thought. That it's just like, it would be like a bird writing a poem about what it's like to have wings. It doesn't know
yeah.
anything other than wings. And so for me, I never thought I needed to write about it because it was just more like, it was more inherent in the way that I was writing, the things that I wrote about and the words that were being used. It was more like, look, this is what it feels like to be me. I'll paint this picture instead of talking directly about it. In fact, I think really the first poem I ever really wrote about it was that number 3000, where I talked
Yeah.
about these are some things that I do. But other than that, it was more just like, instead of telling people what it was like to see the world like I do, I just was more like, here, come sit behind my eyes for this poem and look out through them. This is what it looks like.
Yeah. Because I discovered three poets simultaneously, almost simultaneously, where their main thing was about like their mental health, and their main thing
Okay.
was like this whole, and the way that they were writing about it was sort of like, I can say something about that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Who were
So,
these poets?
Rudy Francisco,
Okay.
Sarah Benet, Neil Hilborn.
Okay.
I saw them all live on one set. It was incredible. The best day of my life.
Wow.
Just a slight little tidbit.
Wait, literally the best day of your whole life?
Well, no, I'm not allowed to say that. Seb won't be happy.
What is the best day of your whole life?
Well, that's a different episode.
That is a different episode. Dirty Bird.
But I also found this thing, right, which
Okay.
is a little bit. Oh God, am I buzzy?
No, you're not buzzy.
Oh, that's all right. I'm really buzzing my end, and I'm slow motion.
You sound delightful to me, love.
Well, that's all right. I got to read it out because it's just a little easier if I read it. But there's just
Okay.
this little snippet that I found really interesting. It said a recent study revealed a strong connection between individuals on the autism spectrum and creative thinking. It helped provide sound scientific evidence for the increased rate of divergent thinking in people on the spectrum. So when we go beyond,
Sort that avalanche later.
yeah, but like when we go beyond thinking about creativity and writing,
Yeah.
think of problem solving. I think that's quite an interesting one to look at for the spectrum. Because for you, especially, you have solved some problems in interesting ways.
Give me an
And
example of one.
you know my favorite, the peanut butter stirrer.
That's true. For those of you
And
who are unaware, what he's referring to is here in America, everything is sold in gigantic quantities. And so when I buy the peanut butter that I enjoy, which only has peanuts in it, it comes in a 2.5 pound jug and it's unstirred because it's natural. So all the oil is at the top, all the peanuts are at the bottom, and you must stir yourself. To stir that manually is impossible.
It's a
So I
hard one.
devised a system where I put a fork in my electric drill, cut a hole in the ceiling of it, and then use the electric fork drill to stir it, and it works beautifully.
Yeah, it does. And I want it. I would buy that tool.
I know, I'm going to invent it.
I tell you what, if you get us to 4,000 hours, will you just eat a whole jar of that peanut butter?
I would die. It's literally 2.5 pounds. I would die. It would close off my colon and cloaca forever.
But like that is an extreme example.
That is an extreme example, but
I think
it's
if
an
we're
accurate
gonna,
one.
yes, but if we're gonna dial it back, I think this sort of way, like the way that sort of article talks about it, it's sort of like we think outside of the box,
Sure.
and I think that's a good thing.
Well, I
But
think you're right too, especially if you were to look back in history at the sheer number. You're gone. I'll just keep speaking because you can hear me.
Somewhere, yeah, I got you with my headphones.
The sheer number of massively critical thinkers to the advancement of the human race, like Einstein and Lincoln and all of these different people, they have then circled back and said that the vast majority of these thinkers that have changed the way that we see our world have been on the spectrum. They just were undiagnosed at the time because of, diagnosis process back then.
Which is fascinating.
It is fascinating.
But it would be, I'd love to like get confirmation of that.
I
Like
know.
in some way. Just take a doctor back in time and like
And be like, is that guy? Is that guy? Is that guy?
diagnose this.
Yeah. So
Chris-
in what ways have you seen that creative outside the box thinking? In what ways has it helped or changed your life?
I think it's just in small things as well. It's like a simple problem. I don't know examples as such, but it's a simple thing of, oh, this isn't working.
Yeah.
Of like, or like, like the old classic Friends scene where they're trying to get that sofa up the stairs
Pivot.
and everyone, yes, pivot. Like sort of like that sort of thing would be the sort of situation that I would probably thrive in,
Yeah,
where I come up with a new idea.
absolutely.
But I think it's that sort of creativity
Yeah.
that also counts. So when they say creativity, I don't think it's just,
Making things.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't
I
know
think
why I
you're
didn't
right.
say that. I don't know why I action.
Uh,
And if you didn't interrupt me, I wonder how far I would have gone.
You should have just done
Just
the whole
started
the whole
paying.
rest of the episode in mime.
That's coming.
We're gonna do a silent episode using only hand signals and miming.
I bet you it gets no views.
Spotify will be like, what are we listening to? What is he doing? Is it windy? So I think you're right, though. I think again, this is kind of circling back to the episode, last week's episode about busting these myths. It's the definition that needs to be slightly altered, because I think you're right. I think there is a surplus of creativity in people on the spectrum, and like you said, it's not just the creation of artistic things, it's
Yeah.
also a creativity in thought in general, and it's looking at problems from an angle that maybe nobody else has ever looked at it. And so maybe when we circle back and we do that episode on statistics, I would be curious to hear like proportions and stats on people that work in like problem solving roles at like NASA, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I want to know how many of those people are on the spectrum, because they have to be in order to find creative solutions to problems that maybe no one else could find.
But I think it would also be interesting because we have got the special guest coming up.
We
And I
do.
think I'd like to bring this point up with her where it's like, in your experience. But all right, here's a sentence for you that nobody's ever said to you before.
Okay.
But I think if we're gonna talk about poetry, I think
Yes.
your poetry is more autistic than mine. Right?
Explain.
Okay, let me
No, I probably agree, but I want to know
yeah,
why.
yeah. Because it's got that just that sentence came out my face and I was like, okay, now I need to explain.
Yeah, you're like, hey,
Okay.
you write way more autistic poetry than I do. I think you're right, but I want to know why.
Because I think a lot of it is like whatever form you're in, and I think it's why you're good at photography too, and like whatever else. But I think it's attention to detail.
Oh yeah.
And that one with like when you think of being on the spectrum, a lot of people say there's that big attention to detail where
Sure.
and we've talked about where we notice things that other people don't. But I think like yours is definitely more there.
Okay.
And I think there's a better way of wording it than your poetry is more artistic. But,
I actually prefer the first sentence.
yeah.
So do you have an example that you can think of one that's been noticeable? Like, can you think of something that is noticeable in that?
In what sense? In one of your poems?
Yeah, like what's an example of one that you can remember where you've been
I think
like,
it's
whoa,
just
that was an
literally
autistic
like
poem.
but I think it's just the intense detail that you put into every piece where it's like you're noticing these things that so many people would miss.
Sure.
And like that happened to everybody. Like that's the other thing I think that is so that your poetry captures. It's not special in the sense of it being anything special.
Yeah.
It's more special because it's these things that everyone occurs to, but nobody notices them as much as you do.
That makes sense. Well, that was the origin of the entire course and book, Miracle in the Mundane, was that if you just, for those of you who weren't blessed with being on the spectrum as like their easy way to do it,
Yeah.
you can practice that and you can train yourself to see those things. And I think that's something that I've always wanted to impart with my poetry, is that you have a choice of how you interact and perceive this world, and you can either skim the surface of it or you can deep dive. And that's, I think you're right though. And it's interesting that you brought that up, because something that has always stood out to me about your poetry and about your delivery of your poetry is kind of what you just said. You are able to do things that I'm not able to do. And so for an example, like I've done book signings all over the world now, and
Yeah.
some of them have had like 600 and 700 people at them, and I can do those things, but I refuse to read any of my work at them. I refuse to I don't do any reading from my book. All I literally do is I sit down and I basically say, hey, I'm an idiot and I don't want to talk about myself. So the only way that this is going to happen is if you just ask me questions. And that's what I do
Yeah.
for an hour
I'm
and a
gonna
half.
come on your next tour, and
Please do.
I'm just gonna read your book in full at every
You'll be
at
like,
every
first a
single
special
show.
guest. But so you are able to get up and perform. And that is something that I
Another
literally
thing.
don't have in me at all.
Yeah.
It's not that it scares me, because it doesn't scare me. Like being in front of people doesn't scare me. I just have no, like, that's just like not there. It's just like, it would be like telling me, hey, next month, try having a baby. I'd be like, well, that just can't happen.
Yeah. But I think, I don't know, it's a strange thing where I sort of defy that whole thing that people say, you're on a spectrum, you can't do this. Or you
Yeah.
can't do this because you can't go and be in a crowded room, or you can't handle that. And a lot of people
Yeah.
would think that. And that's another thing. And I don't know, like, I don't question it to a degree where it's a problem, but I can do
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
But it's between just the two of us. It's like there's so much difference in style.
Yep.
But I think there's some people on the spectrum who struggle with expression because they
I
worry
agree.
about how it is.
Yes, they do. And I don't
And
have that.
you definitely don't have that. But
No.
that's something that I always have to tell people, like even those who aren't on the spectrum. Like somebody messages me, go, I like your writing. How do you write this? And I'm just like, your aim shouldn't be, it has to be good.
Yeah.
It should be, you're happy with it.
Sure.
That's it. It's not about being like Insta approved or like
Yeah.
whoever you're trying to get it approved by.
See, even what you just said is another chief difference between us. Because you said like it's not about if it's like people think it's good, and I agree with that part, but then you said it's just about if you're happy with it.
Yeah.
I don't even have that, because
Yeah.
this is literally the way it feels. So this is an interesting episode because we're literally just talking about creative processes, which is, I think, a lot of people wanted to know about this, and so I'm glad that you brought this up.
Well, you gave me no choice because I was
I
like,
know.
I'm gonna just research some stuff and I'm gonna talk about it, and you're like, record.
But this is good because I think it came from a more organic place.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is like you said that for you don't think about the way that it's like you're not thinking about if it's good for Instagram or if it's good for whatever. You're just thinking about, am I happy with it? So when I write, for me, I don't even know if I'm happy with it. I don't even know if it's good. I don't know if it's bad. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I hate it. I don't know if I just write it, and I literally, it's like I go like this. Then I slide it to the side and I drop it and I move on. And then I'm like, slide it to the side, drop it, and I move on. And then the
I think
only
I have
reason
pieces like that.
you do,
See,
okay.
this is the contradiction. And this is why it's so difficult for me to talk about it, because I write from two different places.
Okay.
Like always. But like because my performance poems are way different.
They are.
to like this other style that's just meant to be on paper. And then it's just like, so for me, it's like, I don't even know where I am half the time.
Sure.
But like sometimes it's just literally down and it's just put that aside.
Yep.
And that does happen. But like there's other ones where I'm like, I got to be happy with this one.
That makes
But I think
sense.
I think that might be more to do with the ones that are about me.
Okay.
Maybe. But more about like
maybe.
the act, or maybe about what's going on up here. Because for me, it's like I'm trying to put out a message, so I want to make sure that message is clear.
That makes sense. And I don't ever think of that.
I don't want to like get on a stage and be like, oh yeah, autism is a grapefruit, and like never explain what I mean. Like
I would say autism is a grapefruit, and then I would leave and everyone would be like, what? And I'd be like, I don't care.
Yeah, everyone would be messaging
Here's a
you
question.
like, what do you mean?
I got a question for you. If you did not know us and all you had before you was a stack of 50 of my poems and a stack of
Yeah.
50 of your poems, and
Yeah.
none of your poems were the ones that were intrinsically about you having autism, if they were just
Okay.
50 random poems
Yeah.
from each of us, if a panel of people were to be reading and they were to read them, do you think that they would know that you are on the spectrum? And do you think that they would know that I am on the spectrum, just
Oh,
sheerly based on reading the poetry? And this is
that's
something I also
interesting.
want the people listening to this or viewing this. If you did not know that we were autistic in any way,
Oh, I like that. I like that.
would you
Because
know that we were based on our body of work?
I sent you 2 poems the other day. One was ended with me saying something like, I am a man slowly becoming a woodland.
Yes.
And then I sent another one that was like, you are the comma between the spaces.
Yes.
And I think if I wrote in that style, right, I don't know. I would go as far to say that I don't know if people would be able to tell the difference
Ooh,
in the sense of like, so I think like, because I think that style clashes very similar.
it does.
So I don't even know.
So based on
Maybe.
50, if you had 50, do you think they would think you were autistic?
No,
Do you think they would think I am?
no. But like knowing you are explains why there's so much detail to me.
That makes sense. Okay. So
But
for a normal person that was just reading them, you don't think that they would say, this is interesting. Like, why does that guy's brain do this?
this guy's an autistic being.
So then follow-up question to that. Do you think that the reason they might not know that we're on the spectrum based on our writing is because a neurotypical person does not dive deep enough into the subtext of what's being said to
Or
illuminate that?
maybe. See, I think we need a third one.
Okay.
We need like a third bias to just be like, this person is neurotypical, this person's this person's
Yeah.
this. And I'd also like to get another one in there, like a bipolar.
Ooh, that'd be good.
Like just to see the difference.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we look for a bipolar poet and then ask these questions?
That's such a nice little sentence.
A
I like
bipolar
that.
poet.
Yeah, but
We
I
should
would
do
love
that.
to see that. Okay, let's
I
do
would
it.
too. And I would like to see the differences between the way our work feels. It would be actually interesting. You know what would be really interesting is, and we need to do this. But this would be a lot of outreach and it would be hard to do, but we could try. We should find somebody who classify themselves as a poet that suffers from as many different varieties of mental disorders, even though I hate that word. So like, it would be cool to find, we are 2 autistic ones. It'd be cool to find a bipolar poet, a schizophrenic poet. It'd be cool to find a manic depressant poet. It'd be cool to find an ADHD poet, which you kind of are. It would be cool to find somebody.
I got the depression, the ADHD, and the autism down.
But you're all the same one, and so we need a different one. So it'd be interesting we need to find. Yeah, and then it'd be interesting to put all of our work together and read it, and then
I know someone who's ADD who might be able to help us here.
Okay, good. Because what we can do is we can put all of our work together, and we can ask people outside of this before the episode, does our work represent our mental struggle? Does it?
I like that.
And then we could even say, here's what we could do. We could put them all together and we could say to them, based on these poems, we want you, here's who we have. We have 2 autistics, a bipolar, a depressant, schizophrenic, someone with borderline personality disorder. We have all these. We have 10 people, and here are 10 poems. We want you to put them where you think they go.
That could be fun.
And see if they get it.
That's how further down the road.
Yeah, we need to make that happen.
Because that'll be fun, and that'll be interesting.
I'd be curious about that to see if the words that we are writing and the style in which we're writing them are indicative of these mental challenges.
Yeah. I'm me. Let's do that.
Okay. So if you're watching this or if you're listening to this and you know someone who fits these categories,
or it's just you,
reach out to us, because this would be a really fascinating experiment. Okay,
so let's wrap this one up a little bit. But my question to you is why don't you do art because for me, I think you have the mind for it.
Which kind of
And
art?
like, I don't know, drawing, painting,
I
that
suck at
sort of
drawing.
thing.
I can paint.
See, I don't know, because like for me, it would shock me. See,
No, I
this is the
suck
thing
at
I need to
drawing.
see now. I need to
I
see this.
suck at drawing.
I don't think I've ever seen a drawing that you've done,
Oh, they're horrible.
and I need to see them because there's
I
part of me
literally
that
can't.
thinks. But you have the imagination to make up the characters, though, right? But you
I
just
do have
can't get
that. It's
just
just like it
can't
would
get
be
them
a
out of your
stick
head.
person. But like here's the weird thing. I'm a pretty good painter. Like I can paint, but I can't draw.
Okay, we should
But
do that. But
I've never tried painting a face before. But like I can paint things.
I should paint you, and you should paint me, and we should just see what happens.
Holy shit. We could try that. So but here's the thing.
Live.
Oh god, no.
Just
But the other art that I do, I think an art that I do practice though is I can build things.
yeah, which
Like
I cannot.
I can build things. I can fix things. But as far as drawing, I don't, and I can play music.
You've seen my doodles on Instagram.
They're fantastic.
They're not masterpieces.
See, that is weird though, because like I do practice other arts. Like, you know, there's photography, there's writing, I can play music, I can play a few instruments. Um,
I would say the
but
guitar actually like might soothe you.
I play it a lot. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see, there's one right there and one right there. And then there's a ukulele and there's a mandolin.
Yeah,
So
because I've
that,
seen you like play guitar, and it's just that feeling of peace.
yeah. And I just kind of space out.
Yeah, so I think if we're gonna try and draw some reasoning for this episode happening, is to sort of just talk about how we do things to sort of inspire. In a
Yeah.
sense. Because
Yeah.
I sort of, because if you are on the spectrum and you're struggling to find anything that you know doesn't help you with the coping, try something creative.
Try
And as you've
everything.
seen, like we're all bad at something, but we're also pretty good at things too.
I agree.
I can't build things. I can't do it.
I can't draw things.
I can half draw things.
You can very well draw things. I still have your drawing of the hairy lemon.
That's a
It's
brilliant picture.
It's one of my most treasured pieces.
That's an original, man. That's only one in existence.
So
That
to
should be on the
summarize,
wall.
it should be. So to summarize, creativity is an absolutely fundamental part of being on the spectrum. And I would be
Yeah.
curious to know how many great artists throughout history were on the spectrum. And that's one of the facts I'm going to look up for our fact episode.
Oh, okay. A little spoiler.
Yeah, spoiler. And then second spoiler, eventually we are going to try to get a panel of people with mental struggles that are also creatives. And we're going to do like experiments and try to see if people can classify which is which, just solely based on the work.
Okay.
I like that.
That is going to be fun.
Well, let's end with some poems, man. Speaking of creativity,
Okay.
what do you got for us? You picked the one I'm reading today, but
I did. I think I might just read the other ode that I didn't read last time. But this one's longer.
okay.
So do you want to go first with your short, or do you want to end on the short?
I don't care. Whatever you want.
I don't care. I'll go first then.
Okay.
Because I love yours, so it's a good ending.
Okay.
It's a good ending to what the message should have been.
Yeah. Go.
If you didn't interrupt me and press record when I wasn't ready.
True. But I'm glad we did, because this episode turned out to be genius.
Yeah. So, just a reminder, because this was last week
Yeah.
that I said it, but this one's called Ode to Childhood Ended in Rocket Fuel.
Okay.
If you ask my mother, she'd probably say things like, he was a good boy. She'd probably decorate those words with elongated shores and yeahs, as she would subtly slip in how I was a hurricane even before the Coca-Cola kicked in. When my mother says I wasn't a bad kid, she isn't lying. I just never knew imagination had a curfew. I couldn't get to grips with the definition of danger, and risk was the challenge I was never too scared to face. Ask the scar on my right knee. Ask the x-ray machine. Ask Miss Elliot's plant pots. I've never really been a boy of the earth, a man of solid ground. I'm more stars and moon smoke. I'm more out of this world than actually in it. Ask the forehead stitches about the scuffle with the bookcase. Ask the soles of my shoes how the world tastes without gravity. Ask my heart how it feels to be weightless and become a helium balloon strong enough to lift me. It's hard to see straight when your head is in the cloud, but mother was never an anchor. She was a rocket pack strapped to my back with an endless tank of gas. I'm grown now. 6 feet on the good days, like I've said before, and mother is still the legs behind the chasing. Fluent in encouragement. Ask the hockey trophy. Ask the swimming medals. Ask the 2,000 poems and still counting. I'm grown now, only just squeezing into my true colors and finding a place to call home. I bought an apartment in the clouds, a separate room for my imagination because it'll stay up after hours. Ask the unfinished manuscript. Ask anybody who knows me.
Have you read that one to your mom yet?
Not yet.
Dude, she's going to sob a bucket.
She is.
That's beautiful, man.
I gotta have a break though, right? Because I put a poem about her in this book, so I gotta get my dad's poem in the dragon book done. So then
There
it's
you
like
go.
I'm not. It doesn't look like I have a favorite.
You're not playing favorites in your poetry. You need to read that to your
Exactly.
mom, and you need to record a video. Have Sav record a video of you reading it to your mom, and we'll throw it into the next episode.
Not the next episode, because like I said, she's in the book. So I gotta do my dad's first, which I
Well, you
haven't
can
written
just tell
yet.
your dad that his is en route.
Okay.
I want a video of that. I do.
you, you read yours.
Okay. I hate reading my poems. It's like I fucking hate it, man. I just hate it. I always have, and I always will.
I'm just gonna keep making you do it.
Okay.
Do it
Some
in an
poets
accent if you want.
promise eternity, the world, the moon, and the stars in the sky. Some promise immortalization in words, in song. Some promise perfection. I've not these to give. I promise patience and the space to know you are loved precisely as you are.
It's so beautiful.
Short,
As this is
short
the
and sweet.
creative episode, you should read it differently. You should
Some
read it in
poets
some.
promise eternity, and the world, the moon, and the stars in the sky. Some promise immortalization in words, in song. Some promise perfection.
Why isn't that on on Spotify?
That should be
right
the
now?
only voice I ever read my poems on. I've not these to give. I promise patience and the space to know you are loved precisely as you are.
You should do weeks where you do different accents.
I should just only read poetry in that voice, and everyone will be like, why does he do that? And it'll be like when singers, like British singers, sing in American accents, and everyone's like, why
Yeah.
don't they have an accent when they sing? And mine will be like, I don't know, man. When I read my poetry, that's just the voice.
No, just like 1 week Scottish, next Irish. Just every week change it up.
I should do.
I can't imagine you doing Scouse poetry. That would just be
Oh, it's the Scousers. I need to have Mark give me some more lessons on the good Scouse accent, though. What kind of book? Some poets promise eternity. That was more Irish, but there's like some Scouse and some Irish.
It was like a Scouse who went to Ireland and has been there for 2 years.
Scouse. Yep. He caught the ferry. All right, brother.
This episode worked out. I don't know how.
It worked out beautifully, man. I think we actually touched on some really interesting and important subjects that we can also revisit later, which is nice.
Exactly. Wonderful, 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 wonderful.
Episode 12 in the books.
We love you, and we'll see you next week.
Do all the things. Tell your friends. Watch it. Put it on play when you go to bed at night, and just let it go through all of ours because that'll help us.
Really would.
See you later, kids. We'll love you.